Hey guys, we are going to get started. So welcome to our final session for Virtual College Bootcamp. We're really excited that you're here with us today. And today's topic is going to focus on standardized testing within the current environment. And we have some wonderful panelists and guest speakers here with us today to talk to you about that. So my name is Mrs. Edwards, the Career Counselor and Scholarship Coordinator at Atlee and Patrick Henry High School. And I am going to just take a minute for our panelists to introduce themselves to you, starting with Mr. Hurley.
Good morning. My name is Josh Hurley, and I am the Director of School Counseling at Patrick Henry High School.
And then from Virginia Tech.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for hosting this, and I think it's a great opportunity for students. My name is Danette Gomez-Bean. I'm hoping to be a resource for you today, and I direct recruitment and operations for the Office of Undergraduate Admissions.
Thank you, guys. All right, we are going to get things underway, and Mr. Hurley is going to kick us off with some information about the SATs and ACTs.
Right. So one of the biggest questions that I get every single year is, should I take the SAT or should I take the ACT or should I take both? So I just wanted to give you a brief overview of what both tests look like. So we'll start with the ACT. So for the ACT contains 4 multiple choice tests. So we're looking at English, math, reading, and science. And then there is an optional writing test as well. So the ACT is a bit more of an achievement test. So you're looking at things that you've actually learned in your classes, and that's what you'll be tested on. So the tests are designed to measure skills that are important for success in post-secondary education. The scores range from 1 to 36. So each section will actually be scored separately. And then you'll get a combined score, which is called a composite score, which is the average of all of those scores together. So let's take a look at the SAT. So the SAT is a bit more of an aptitude test. So if we're looking at the difference between the ACT and the SAT is really looking at how you apply certain skills. So the SAT contains 3 components. We've got reading and writing, math, and then also an optional essay for that one as well. The SAT is really focused on the knowledge and skills that students will need to be successful in that first year of college. The scores range for each of the tests that you're going to take with the SAT from 400 to 1600. So the reading and writing accounts for 800, and then the math is 800 as well. And then the essay is actually scored separately. The ACT or the SAT does focus a bit more on vocabulary and understanding different words. So what's the main difference? How do you decide? Statistically, about 1/3 of people do better on the SAT, 1/3 of people do better on the ACT, and then 1/3 of people do about the same on both. So if you're looking to really try and make a decision on which one is best for you, my best advice is to just Google some practice questions for both tests and see which one really fits your style the best. And if you have the capability to take both tests, I think it doesn't hurt. You can hedge your bets and take both. And colleges are really going to choose whichever one you do better on. So if you do want to take both tests, you're certainly able to do that and just see which one works best for you. All right, so let's talk about how to prepare for both of these tests once you figure out which one is the right test for you. So we'll start with the SAT. So the SAT actually has partnered with Khan Academy to provide free customized SAT prep based on your PSAT scores. So you'll see here the directions on how to link your PSAT scores to Khan Academy. So that's really going to give you a great opportunity to, again, get free prep work. I believe it should take about 2 weeks. It's a pretty extensive program, but it's really going to focus on the areas that you need to improve on based on those PSAT scores. So again, free and customized, which is fantastic. For the ACT, there are a lot of prep materials on the ACT website, which is there on your screen. We also receive free practice booklets every single year. So, if you need a physical copy, just visit your center at your school and you can pick one up. And then the last thing that I wanted to mention is there are fee waivers available for both the SAT and the ACT. So if you are worried about the cost of those tests, just see your school counselor or shoot them a message and they can provide you with a waiver, which will reduce the cost of those tests. So it really helps out a lot. And with that being said, I'll pass it over to Danette.
Thank you, Mr. Hurley. That was very helpful. So students and families, I want you to know that test taking is anxiety driven sometimes, and I understand that I too am a parent and I have a daughter who's applying this year to colleges, so I'm right there with you. I'm feeling that anxiety, but I also know that if you're a senior this year, take a deep breath. You've been through a lot. And I will say that testing is one of those things that bring anxiety anyway, but know that this year, universities like Virginia Tech understand that you are going through a lot. And so this will be the most forgiving year you'll ever see in college admissions. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what that looks like. And Ms. Edwards, is my connection okay? Okay, great. So my first piece of advice to families, and this is what I would tell my own daughter, is only take the test if you feel safe, comfortable, and healthy. The tests are not a deal breaker. So please know that if you feel that this is a choice you want to make, you make it as well informed as you can. When you make that choice to attend a testing site, to take the test, do your best and don't stress. Again, this will be a very forgiving year in the world of college admissions. And you'll see our hokey bird there with his mask, knowing that that's really important right now. So let me talk to you a little bit about how universities are really looking for your story this year, because the game has changed, so to speak. Admissions professionals like myself are working very hard to find attributes that you already have, stories that you've already been telling people, and not emphasizing that score as the major component of your academic and personal story. So it is one tiny data point of your huge picture of who you are. And so you'll see these three people kind of just sitting around. I can promise you that each of their applications are going to say something completely different. And if they all got the same score, you can imagine that that score is going to mean very little to me. What I want to know is, why are they holding cameras? You know, like what are they about? You know, this tells me a lot about who they are just by this picture. And again, I want you to share all yourself in the application, so knowing that the test is just a tiny component. So I know the question on everyone's mind is, what if I do include that score? What's it going to mean this year? It's going to mean what it's always meant, but I will tell you there's a de-emphasis on it. So what we've learned over 40 plus years of research about standardized tests is that really it just kind of shows your testing ability. So it's a one-time shot in the arm type of experience that you're going to have. And so it tells college admissions folks, all right, if this person had a midterm or a final and it was a one shot, that this is kind of how they would perform. You and I both know that that's not indicative of your entire educational career. So it's really, again, just how you took that test. As Mr. Hurley mentioned, it does test for different things, but at the end of the day, what it tries to capture is your math, verbal, science, and even a little bit of history, because you have to know how trajectory is in all of these areas. And these are the areas that you've taken since first grade, right? You've always had a math, you've always had English verbal, you've always had some component of science and some civics or something included. So that's in there. But at the end of the day, what standardized tests only prove is a potential success rate in your first year in college. And for people like me and university officials, we don't get ranked on that first year. We get ranked based on how well you do over the entire time you're at our school and your graduation rate. So we care too about year 2, year 3, and year 4, which these tests don't test for. So we have other indicators. There are books written about those other indicators that show how well you're going to do to graduation. So again, that test is only going to show us that 1-year indicator. So when we do that in financial aid and in admissions, again, we're using that sometimes to help us understand your ability to be successful again in that first year. But keep in mind, again, at a lot of schools, including Virginia Tech, this score is completely optional this year. And I'm confident that any school that you apply to, if you don't want to take the test or include your score, you can have that conversation, even if they're not test optional. But for us, we are.
Can I add something in there, Danette?
Mm-hmm.
So for Hanover County, our transcripts include any tests that you've taken that have been reported to the school. So if you do not want your SAT or ACT scores to show up on your transcript when you're applying to college, just contact your school's registrar, and there's a form that you can complete to remove the score. So sometimes students take a test and they were having a bad day and they didn't do well on it, and they don't want that score reported. So just contact your school's registrar office and we can take care of that part for you.
Thank you. That's a really good point. In addition to that, I want to share many schools are moving to a self-reported academic record. So Virginia Tech is one of those schools, which means that we will never see your transcript until June or July of next year. So everything that you put in the self-reported academic record is 100% up to you to report. And of course, we want as much data as possible, but you don't have to share your test scores this year. But yes, if you're sending transcripts, we will see that test score a lot of times. So I want to also give an example. So for those of you who want a concrete example of when you should and shouldn't have a test score submitted, I'll give you an example. So I'm going to use my daughter, which she hates when I do this, but my daughter got a 1080 on her SAT, and she got about a 1080 on her PSAT. So I'm thinking that's about where she's at. And she is a strong student, but not the top of her class. She's kind of an AB student. And she has some rigor, which means she has some dual enrollment in AP, but definitely not the full gamut, okay? So she's a strong student. And she said, Mom, do I put my SAT score in? And I said, well, let's talk about that. If you think it's going to help your application, then put it in there. If you don't, then don't. So I'll give you what that means. So if you're applying to a school where a 1080 is about the average of the incoming class and what they've received in the past, then you're right there with them. So throw it in there because you're right within their averages. If you're applying to schools where their averages are several hundred points above that, that score may not help you because you're below their average. And I said, so you might want to leave it out of those schools. So again, that's a choice she's going to have to make. What I did tell her is, Morgan, it's important that you put all about what you do outside of the classroom because she's very involved and has lots to offer. And I said, those are the types of things that schools are going to need to see to supplement that test score. So I know many of you volunteer, many of you have capstone projects you've worked on, you've done, sports and art, and we understand that this year those things have kind of been on hold, but you can still show how that's part of your identity because schools are wanting to see that when you show up, if you show up to their schools, when you enroll, that you're going to be contributing to the school more than a test score. And for Virginia Tech, that is a big deal. And again, I'm going to use Virginia Tech as an example. We have had holistic admissions now for 2 years, so this will be our 3rd cycle, and the SAT has been a tiny part of that. So it's been de-emphasized.
Can I ask you a question? So I know a lot of schools, when they're doing test optional, have minimum requirements, such as a GPA requirement. Are there any requirements for Virginia Tech this year, or is testing optional just across the board?
Nothing's changed about our review. So no, there are no minimums. We have students who are admitted and enroll with a 3.2 GPA and some with a 4.2 GPA. So it really depends And again, I'm thinking universities are going to be really forgiving this year. I will tell you that a lot of that depends on the school system and their rigor and other application details, which I'll go over in the next slide. I want to real quickly just belabor the point about the risks and benefits of including or not including your test scores. When you look at this left-hand column, it's a lot of text, but really what it's saying is you are taking a risk by not including the test score at some schools, because maybe you do have an above average and they would love to see that score to help move you along in the admissions process. Some are using them for merit scholarships. So by not submitting your test score, you may forfeit some of the options for those merit scholarships. So again, keep in mind there are some risks. Now, the benefits are almost identical. So it's kind of win-win, lose-lose at this point, because the benefit could be that that if you include your test score, again, it could be used to help you. It could be used for a merit scholarship, but also at the same time, if you don't include them, they may benefit you as well. So again, the risk and benefits are quite equal.
And one thing I'd like to add, you know, if we're talking about looking at colleges' average test scores, one of the best ways to look that information up is to go to collegeboard.org and use their Big Future website. And then you can select all of the schools that you're looking at and quickly scroll through and see the average SAT score that they typically accept. So, you know, like Ms. Bean was saying, if you're looking at, does my score fall within the average? Is it above average? Is it below average? That's a great way to check.
Yep, and I'm not gonna answer all these questions because I think we already have. The only ones I'm gonna touch on are ones we haven't talked about. So what is a super score? Super score, as Mr. Hurley mentioned, you have an ACT or SAT, and let's say you took both or you took them multiple times. A lot of schools like Virginia Tech will take the highest of those. So we will convert them to one scale, which Virginia Tech converts ACT to SAT, and we'll take the highest of all your sub-scores. We do not take any subject tests at Virginia Tech. Some schools do, we don't. So you just need to take the test if you're gonna take it. And some schools see all your scores, some don't. As Mr. Hurley mentioned, if they're on your transcript, we'll probably see them, but if you don't self-report them, we won't. So again, the penalized for not submitting score. At Virginia Tech, you won't be, but other schools, you might wanna check in with them. So the last thing I'm going to talk about on the next slide, holistic review is a big deal for schools. So again, we're looking at your academic rigor and your grades, which you've already done. So for you seniors, there's no grades we're ever going to see your senior year until after you're enrolled. So that's the case at Virginia Tech. We don't take midterm grades, we don't take semester grades, and we don't take final grades until after you've enrolled. So what you've done your freshman, sophomore, junior years is really all we're going to have to review. We don't take recommendation letters or resumes. Other schools might, but we don't. And then the next slide just talks about our deadlines. So real quickly, you know, a lot of schools have different deadlines. Just want to give you the heads up for Virginia Tech. We do have an early decision deadline of November 1st, and then an early action, which is December 1st. Those are the two I highly recommend. You have the best chances of getting admitted to Virginia Tech in those 2 rounds. And then finally, I think I might have one more slide, or this might be it. Yep, that's it. So we can start answering questions in the chat.
Okay, we have opened up the chat, so please feel free to enter any questions that you might have for our panelists today that are for the good of the group. Thank you. I see a few coming in. So again, you're just entering any questions that you might have for the group today, for the good of the group. And we'll start with our first one here. Can or should you hide AP test scores from colleges?
I don't see an incentive to do that. I think you can go ahead and include them. Yeah, I would include them because then we know you took the test and you tried to get some credit for it. So I would leave it on there.
Okay.
You can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the more important piece of taking those AP classes is the rigor of the course and how well you do in the class. So making sure that you're striving for that A or B in that AP level class, that will really tell colleges that you're a bit more prepared to go into college level coursework in your freshman year. So, you know, the test can provide you with credit, but the class is really an important piece when looking at admissions.
Somebody had asked, what's the most common test? I believe they're just referring to what's the most common standardized test that students take and submit.
So on the East Coast, the SAT is much more prevalent than the ACT, but colleges will take both. In the state of Virginia, you can take one or the other, and colleges will take both.
This is one we see a lot. How many times should I take the SAT?
I think that depends on the student. You know, if you are looking at the averages from the colleges that are on your list of schools that you'd like to apply to, you know, and you're falling below the average, then certainly you might want to consider taking the test again. I think too, though, kind of what Danette was talking about with her daughter, you know, if you've taken the test and you just don't feel like you can improve those scores, start thinking about other ways that you can make your application stand out. So looking at extracurriculars, looking at the essays that you write, thinking about ways that you can really showcase yourself aside from just a test score.
Okay. When looking at applicants, do you care about things such as our job or only volunteering in extracurricular activities?
Great question. No, we want to know if you work. We want to know if you care for an elderly family member or you are the person who gets your younger sibling off the bus. We need to know that because it shows character, it shows grit, it shows goals, it shows family. We want to know everything. So don't leave any space empty. If you can put something about yourself on that application, there's going to be eyes that read it. So please include that. And this leads to another question in the chat about including a lot of your personal situation. We have to know that stuff because you're going to bring that person with you to college, right? And so if we've seen that you've overcome adversity or you've overcome mental illness or anything that you feel you don't want to share, you're not alone. Other students have dealt with certain things, and we want to see that you've overcome or that you're getting help, and that shows strength in your application. It's actually one of the attributes we ask for in our application is how have you overcome a tough situation? So please share those.
And to add on to that, you know, Virginia Tech doesn't take recommendation letters, but a lot of schools do. So talking with your counselor, if you've gone through something, you know, that you would like the admissions office to know, talking with your counselor about that, and they could potentially include that in a recommendation letter for you as well.
And then somebody just asked, kind of related, they said, does it go along with, should they hide or not send their IB scores as well? So they're just kind of asking about that.
The more data points you send us, the better, especially if it's in favor of your application.
Okay, what colleges don't require the SAT? Any resource that we could recommend that students could look at, or just simply going to the college admissions website and looking up that information? What are your thoughts?
I haven't seen a site that's gathering those. Actually, you know who has it is NACAC. So NACAC, so the NACAC organization does have every university. We were supposed to submit what we were requiring this year, and it's in the database there.
Okay.
And I'll put that in the chat.
Thank you. Okay, so that is all of our questions that we have. We just want to go ahead and thank you all for joining us today on our final session of College Boot Camp. We want to thank our panelists, Mr. Hurley and Ms. Bean. This is tremendous, awesome information for our students and families, so thank you for that. We do want to mention again that this session was recorded, and we will be sending it out later this afternoon along with some other resources for you all. And then finally, we are going to be sending you in our Communication Through Schoology a post-test survey that we would like you to take to just give us some feedback on the boot camp week, how it went, what your thoughts are, so that we can continue to make improvements on it to make sure that we're getting the best information out there for you all, our students. And also, if you do complete our survey, and we hope you do, you'll be entered into a chance to win some college swag. So something fun there as well. So again, thank you all so much for joining us. We hope you have a great week. We'll see you soon, and we will be keeping in touch. Thank you all. Have a great day. Bye. Bye.
Thank you. Thanks.